Working on collaborative projects is about bringing many talented people and their beautiful minds together to find the best suited solution to the challenge. And this is the goal of any co-creation collaboration project. To find this best solution, we need to make a number of decisions on the way. And the problem here is we're humans and we are not perfect. We're not machines and we cannot simply follow the logic and calculate which ideas will make our company successful. I don't even know if an AI system can do that, though as I'm talking about it, I just think and I get this idea of gonna try this and use AI for one of the projects to define the challenge winners. This is something that we should probably try, but nevertheless, this is not the topic of this video. What I was saying is we're humans and the decisions that we make are influenced by so many factors, not just by pure logic. They're influenced by our past experience, by emotions from this past experience, by emotions we have in the current moment, our personal preferences, the group dynamic that we have, our character, and many, many other different factors. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing because it's something that makes us unique. But when it comes to making optimal decisions, because of our imperfect mind that makes us biased, we can lose our chances for success. And today I want to talk about cognitive biases that groups of people might experience during collaborative projects, like hackathons, like collaborative competitions. I'll be mostly talking about the group of decision makers coming from the client side, coming from the company side, because, well, they are the ones who are responsible for analyzing solutions, for making choices, and we need their clear, unbiased minds to define best ideas. But of course, everything I will be talking about today is also connected to and also influences groups of participants that bring these solutions to the table, because we're all humans again, and yeah, we all have all these different biases. But we need to be able to see them, we need to be able to define them and know how to mitigate them. And it will give us just more chances to get the best possible outcome that will be beneficial for the company, for the business we are doing this project for. And hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lisa and I spent 5 years organizing collaborative university competitions for world well-known companies, helping them to solve their extreme innovation challenges. And now I continue my journey with the goal to foster innovation by helping different parties of the innovation process collaborate and co-create. On this channel, I explore collaboration projects for innovation management, share my experience in managing these projects and processes, and uncover strategies for making collaboration efforts more effective. And we are going to start with the most obvious in-group bias, which is basically when people give preferential treatment to those they consider to be members of their own group. Now here, this bias is also connected to the not invented here syndrome, when we value ideas and knowledge of our own group more. We perceive ideas developed in our own organization, in our own company, as more creative, more innovative, the ones that could actually solve the challenge that we have. We value our internal experts and their experience, their knowledge more than experts coming from other organizations. And this is something that influences collaboration projects a lot, and I've seen it in my practice. You start working with a company, they have an innovation challenge they need to solve, they're looking for partners, they're looking for universities to solve this challenge. But once these partners, these universities suggest their ideas, come up with solutions, the internal team of experts starts to resist. They oppose to these ideas. They find different reasons why these ideas, why these solutions will not work for them. And yes, of course, there are so many reasons why this syndrome and why this in-group bias exist, and it's connected to our conviction of our organization, of our company being so unique, our knowledge being so unique. We want to diminish the importance of information that challenges our beliefs. And it's also connected to tribalism, and it's connected to us believing that our group is the best one, and if someone else's idea is better than ours, it could threaten the existence of our group. It's also about power play. In general, in a collaborative project, we work with a number of people, and everyone is focused on their own goal, on what's best for them. This is completely normal. Like, we all are selfish, and it's a normal thing. We think about ourselves first, even when we work in a group. So imagine you are an industry expert. You lead an internal team of experts, and you try to solve the problem of your organization. And unfortunately, you are not successful. There are many different reasons why this might happen, but you are not successful. And here, you see someone from another organization who can do what you were not able to do, who can solve the problem you were not able to solve. Of course, it might feel like it threatens your position in the company, your expertise. And it definitely takes a lot to accept the fact that someone did a better job than you in this particular case. And of course, it doesn't mean that someone is better than you in general. They just did better this time. And maybe they were lucky, maybe you were not lucky. There are different reasons why this might happen. So you might want to show your power and downplay their contribution and find flaws in their ideas. This is like a normal thing. We are protective. We want to protect our knowledge and our expertise and our position in the company. How does it influence the process? It prevents from learning and accepting information from other teams, and of course it negatively influences the decision-making process. This is not what we want to do in the collaborative project. In the collaborative project, we invite other organizations, other experts to help us to learn from them. But how can we learn if we experience this bias, if we experience this not invented here syndrome? At the end of the project, the company might end up rejecting the most promising solutions, the most promising ideas, and we don't want this to happen. So how do we mitigate this not invented here syndrome? How do we mitigate this in-group bias in collaborative projects? And first of all, it makes sense to find individuals among the decision-making group who are open to new ideas. There are always people like that, and I believe that 2-3 persons might be enough. It's just important that they openly express their opinion and support presented solution. This is something that a facilitator of the process could define during conversation with a team of internal experts. They could define who are open to these new ideas. They could identify these people, and just then during meetings, the facilitator should ask these people to share their feedback. They could ask questions to them. But of course, in general, it's just important to gather all the different opinions of everyone in the group and encourage sharing thoughts during sessions, and not only during sessions, but also outside of official meetings, like in communication channels, in private conversations that you might have, like as a facilitator with them. It's essential to build the atmosphere so that everyone, participants, experts can share their opinions, so that they can feel safe enough to share their opinion, to share what's in their mind. And sometimes it does require gathering anonymous feedback. And that's what we always do at our organization. We ask people to share their opinion anonymously. it's just, for some people, they might feel intimidated when they openly talk about their thoughts. Then another point is about using concrete information, not some abstract trends. And we're talking about numbers here, of course. And this is the reason why we pay special attention to criteria and requirements for the challenge we are trying to solve at the very beginning of the process. I always say that we need to define the problem, we need to define the challenge for a collaborative project, but apart from that, we need to come up with clear criteria, with a clear set of requirements for solutions, because then we will have numbers, and when teams will be presenting their solutions with numbers proving they meet the criteria that were defined at the beginning of the process, it's going to be very difficult for the experts from the internal team to ignore these numbers, so they would need to consider these solutions. Now, another way is, of course, about making the status quo uncomfortable. And it's about making people want changes, showing that that's the only way that will be beneficial for them. So they need to believe that they need to bring these changes to the company, to the business, and they will benefit from it, They will not be punished, but they will benefit. I think maybe we could also highlight, and this is something the facilitator of the process should do, is to highlight how top management, how the whole company, and maybe often even society, if we're talking about innovation challenges, how the society would like to see changes, and these internal team of experts are the ones who need to make these changes happen, and participants are the ones who need to make these changes happen. So people are relying on them, and maybe I would just work with this concept, and probably the facilitator of the process could also talk to top management of the company about some extra perks for the internal team of experts who participated in the project. This is something that we could also use here. And yeah, they just might want to contribute to the project, and they might want to find the solution to the challenge with external teams, with external partners. Another way that I think might be beneficial here is assigning these internal experts as group mentors for separate teams of external partners. So they would associate themselves not with one single group of this company they work for, but also with teams of participants as well. They will feel themselves responsible for the success of their mentee team. And I think they might be more open and more tolerant towards ideas and solutions coming from other teams. They will be interested in solving this challenge, not as a part of the company's team, but in general, Also, one of the research papers mentions perspective taking as an exemplary, indirect, not invented here syndrome countermeasure. And probably it would require conducting separate sessions with the decision-making team, doing kind of a role playing, maybe asking them to think about what they would do if they were to represent this or that team, what they would do, how would they improve the solution, would they like it, would they not like it, and stuff like that. So this is also something that we could try. And yeah, of course, if you have any other ideas on how to mitigate this in-group bias, not invented here syndrome, or any other bias I will be talking about later, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comment. Now, the next bias that is very close to in-group bias in a certain way is groupthink. And a lot of research on this bias initially was conducted by Yale psychologist Irving Yanis. So groupthink is a cognitive bias when people prioritize harmony and conformity within their own beliefs when working in a group. They don't stick to their own opinion. they tend to listen to the majority and go along with the opinion of the majority of the group. Like when it comes to collaborative projects, imagine someone says that the solution presented by that team is not going to work, and most of the people support it, but you disagree with this opinion. You think that it might be worth trying this solution, but as humans, we often just prefer to go with the flow, and we don't speak up, we don't express our opinion. You might even think that you are wrong, and somewhere you miscalculated, you didn't take into account some details that others might have taken into account. So you might feel that something is wrong with your opinion, so you prefer to just do not say anything and go with what the majority says. Now, groupthink can also occur when there is one person who is the leader of this whole thing, and this person dominates the conversation, they dominate the decision-making process, leading others to simply follow. It's a bit like the bandwagon effect, which is a case of this kind of groupthink, where people just jump on board because they see everyone else is doing it. And honestly, I have a terrible personal example of it, a personal experience with it, when I got detained during one of the rallies in my country, when everyone was running and I started running too, despite the fact that there were better options in that situation, and I had to do differently. But again, everyone is running, I have to run too. I don't stick to my own belief. But luckily, nobody's going to detain our decision makers for making the wrong choice, but they might just miss the opportunity to solve the challenge and get a truly innovative solution for their business. Because, yes, this bias tends to show itself in the decision-making process. So we might see a lot of it in our collaborative projects when decisions are to be made, and whether it's an internal group of experts choosing which idea to implement, or groups of participants choosing which idea to present. But this bias is something the facilitator of this whole process should be really, really careful about. Now, the reasons we can observe groupthink seems to come from social anxiety and our desire to be socially accepted through conforming to group norms. We just want people to accept us. We want to be in sync with them, But yeah, it has some implications, of course. And groupthink leads to really poor decisions because the analysis that we make is shallow, and that's how our collaborative projects crumble, and that's how you don't solve the problem that you have. And the issue with collaborative projects is that, again, you need to make thousands of different decisions on the way, and each of them might be wrong because of this bias, and each might jeopardize the success of the project. So Irving Yanis, who was working on this concept, he also identified 8 symptoms of groupthink, which give us insight into how it takes hold. It's about illusion of invulnerability, when the group feels overly optimistic, ignoring clear risks. This is something that might happen. Then we also have collective rationalization, when warnings that don't fit the group's narrative are rationalized away. Then we have illusion of morality, when the group believes their decisions are morally right and they overlook the ethical issues. Now we have excessive stereotyping, when rivals outside the group are negatively stereotyped. We also have pressure for conformity, when anyone with doubts is pressured to stay in line with the group's thinking. That's what we can see a lot in collaborative projects. Then there is self-censorship, when group members hold back their concerns and downplay their own doubts. We have illusion of unanimity, when silence is mistaken for agreement, and the group assumes everyone's on the same page. Again, like some experts, they don't express their opinion, so everyone thinks, oh yeah, they agree with us, which might be not true really. And of course, mind guards, when some members take on the role of shielding the group from information that might disrupt their comfort zone. Now, according to Yanni's groupthink does not have to be inevitable, and there are groups that don't experience it. So he came up with some strategies to help prevent it, and I have adopted his advice to collaborative projects. And the first point is that the facilitators of the process should give each team member the role of a critical evaluator. We need to encourage everyone to voice their doubts and concerns. Also, it might be difficult for some experts to share their opinions openly again because they might feel pressured. So, as when I was talking about the first bias, we might offer anonymous forums to let everyone share their feedback freely. Then we also need to make sure that group leaders, and specifically the leader of the decision-making group, are holding off sharing their own opinions when assigning tasks to avoid influencing the group too much. And I would probably suggest asking their opinion only at the very end of each session, after everyone else shared it. It also might help if leaders step away from some meetings so that the group can reach conclusions without feeling pressured by the authority. And I mean, having experts at meetings is of course beneficial because of their knowledge, but sometimes, for example, when we conduct our hackathons or other collaborative projects, we might want to organize some meetings without the decision-making team at all. And yeah, it just helps participants chill a bit and, go with their thing, do their thing without feeling pressured. Now then, Yanni suggests that the organization can set up multiple independent groups to work on the same problem, ensuring diverse solutions. Well, this is something that we basically do with our collaborative projects, but what I think might be very interesting to do, and I'm willing to do that for one of the hackathons that we will conduct with Disruptive, I would suggest splitting the decision-making expert team into groups as well, so that the decisions about the solutions that are going to win the hackathon, which should be implemented, could be defined not by one expert team, but by 2 or 3 of them. I think it might be very interesting to see how this might influence the dynamic and how it might improve the decision-making process. Really interesting to see how it will go, whether these groups will come up with the same decisions, whether they will agree between each other or it will be different. So the next point is about going through all the different options thoroughly, exploring all of them, not just the most obvious ones. And that's where the facilitator of the process should take their role and sometimes insist on considering and going through all the solutions suggested by participants. And again, I do believe it's also about asking questions to the decision-making teams, like why specifically you don't like this solution, or why specifically do you like this solution? Is there anything that can be done to improve it? And other questions, just asking a lot of questions on the way. This is the role of the facilitator, and this is really important to mitigate all these different biases we're talking here about. Now, another point is that each member of the group should talk about the group's ideas with trusted people outside of their group to get fresh perspective. That's what we do during our brainstorming sessions, when we invite all the different teams to share their opinions about all the solutions presented. But what the facilitator of the process could also do is to encourage some extra activities outside of official meetings, like lunches, like dinners, sometimes parties, and when it comes to online processes, I think that we might organize some calls between 2 or 3 people coming from different groups, including decision makers, actually like totally random, so they could talk to each other and talk about their ideas. And I don't know, like I think this is something that we need to test and see how it might help with the process. Now, the next point on how we could mitigate this bias is connected to outside experts that could be invited to meetings to give feedback. And the group should feel free to question them, to ask them questions. I always insist on gathering feedback and opinion of all the participants of collaborative projects, But I do also think that it's great to invite some third parties who are not involved in the project. For example, university experts, university researchers that do not participate in the process, or some companies' partners, companies' clients. That would be just perfect, I believe. And the next point is about assigning someone to play the devil's advocate, switching up the person each time so that critically thinking stays fresh. I had a colleague and we're still collaborating with him, an outstanding person in my opinion. He was always the one who's not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. Whenever I have any doubt, I like to discuss my ideas with him because he's a perfect devil's advocate. He will always help to get to the core of the notion and see it from different sides. But of course, in collaborative projects, we need to make sure that different people take this role so that everyone could benefit from having this role and from expressing their thoughts. But in general, it's mentioned that diversity is the key to avoiding groupthink. So bringing people with different backgrounds, experiences, perspectives, it helps challenge assumptions and keeps the ideas flowing in new directions. And this is what we always do in our collaborative projects. I always insist that we need to bring many different people from absolutely different places with absolutely different experiences and from different areas as well. Now, from my side, I would like to add to the points also the following. I do believe that it might be important to have training before the start of the project, training with the expert and decision-making team on how to provide feedback. It's important not to judge and do not give any assessments like, oh, this solution is good or this solution is bad and something like that. It's just not the right way, in my opinion. Asking questions, highlighting objective advantages and disadvantages is the right strategy when given an opinion about solutions during collaborative projects. Proposing ideas on what to improve is also a good way, and it's also very beneficial for everyone. Also, I read about it in the book Originals, and the author of this book, Adam Grant, says that decision makers could become more open towards various solutions if before the evaluation session you conduct a separate quick session when you ask them to generate ideas themselves, and during this session the expert might start feeling like creators, which makes them less harsh when they ponder solutions of others. Now, again, another point that I wanted to make is about clear criteria, clear requirements, especially quantitative criteria to evaluate solutions. Again, numbers is something that we all love, and it's difficult to kind of fight with numbers, right? And again, another point that I mentioned already when I was talking about the previous bias, making experts mentor certain groups so that it makes them belong to different groups, not only one. I believe it also might somehow improve the situation, and it might help us to mitigate this bias, this groupthink as well. I also want to mention the Abilene Paradox, which is different to groupthink, but still it's connected, and the Abilene Paradox is when a group of people end up agreeing on a decision that almost nobody actually wants. Each person thinks they're just going along with everyone and with what everyone else prefers, even though it's not really what they want, what anyone wants. It's just about pure communication. Everyone assumes that their opinion goes against the opinion of the group, which is not true. And they stay quiet and they, sometimes support something they don't believe in. So this paradox is about misunderstanding and miscommunication, and this is, again, that's why we need an experienced person to be a facilitator of the project, of the collaborative project. They need to be the ones to solve this paradox, and they should organize discussions, and they should take care about the atmosphere so that people could share their opinions, their thoughts without any doubts, without feeling pressured, without worrying that their opinions might not be accepted. Now that was a lot. But I think I mentioned the two most important biases and solutions to them. And I believe these solutions might also help with other types of our mind's tendencies. And we are coming to our next bias, which is the anchoring bias. Now, anchoring bias is basically when we get stuck on the first piece of information that we hear about something, and it ends up shaping the way we look at everything else. For example, one of the solutions is presented to a group of experts, and one of the experts expresses their opinion about it. The rest of the experts might use this information as an anchor and build their judgment based on this first opinion they heard without considering other important details. And of course, this is something that might lead to poor judgment, poor decision making, and internal experts, they may stick to their original estimates or decisions more than they should. The solution might have evolved, the solution might have changed during the process, during the collaborative process, but they still have this first information in their mind and they stick to it, and they just, kind of don't see the reality, the real picture that we have now. And it's quite difficult to mitigate such a bias. There is an evidence-backed way to counter it. It's about challenging that first anchor. So the expert expresses their opinion about it, and we should ask them and everyone else, why do they believe so? And if this first opinion comes over and over and over again, we also need to talk to our experts and ask why this information, how this information fits what we have now. How is it connected to what we have nowadays? If, for example, they didn't think that solution presented on the very first meeting is a good one, but the solution evolved and now it fits the criteria, how does that first opinion or that first information that they got, how does it matter now when the solution is different? So we should challenge this first anchor. Just by adding this extra step to challenge this first anchor information, identify its flaws, ask experts to think about alternatives. That's how we can reduce the impact of anchoring bias. The next bias on our list, quite an important one that can influence decision making, is the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when people unintentionally seek out or interpret information that fits what they already believe, what they already know. It's just our natural tendency that can affect decision making because it leads us to overlook or dismiss anything that challenges our views. This can be based on expectations we have in a situation or predictions about an outcome. And the more important or personal the issue is, the more likely we are to filter information in a way that supports our own beliefs. Now, when it comes to collaborative projects and decision making during these projects, imagine that the team of experts strongly believe that one of the solutions proposed will never work. Maybe they tried something similar in the past and they did not succeed. Maybe they have prejudice towards some ideas or even some teams. So even if the solution is promising and the team found a way to make it work, the internal team of experts will be looking for flaws and focus their attention on what doesn't work instead of finding ways and helping the team to find ways to improve these details and accept the ideas. They might ignore colleagues, they might ignore other participants showing proof, and of course it might lead to a mistake, it might lead to making a wrong decision. Now, another example is when the decision-making team believes that one university has more experience, more knowledge, their professors and students are more knowledgeable than the ones from another university team. So they might neglect solutions proposed by the university considered less knowledgeable, even if their solutions could be more promising than the ones coming from the star university. And I also see it by how companies sometimes prefer to collaborate with university teams from top 100 universities in the world. They are not looking for the ones that will help them, that will solve their problem, that have experience and technologies they might need. They just go to these star universities and they believe that's where they will get the solution, which is not true. It doesn't work this way. Now, how do we mitigate the effect of our confirmation bias? Well, I believe just like with any other bias that I have already mentioned here, and one of the first things that psychologists recommend is to become aware that we have this issue, that we have this bias. So this is something that, again, the facilitator of the process might want to remind participants about, especially if they feel that something is happening, like the team is considerably neglecting some ideas or some university teams, So then we should talk about a neutral fact base. So we need to diversify sources of information where we get these data from. And the facilitator of the process, of course, they should focus on facts, and they might help to gather these different data to introduce it to the internal team of experts, to participants. So this is something that I believe the person who's responsible for the whole process should take care of. Then again, I have already mentioned it, and I'm going to mention it again and again and again. We need to gather as many opinions as possible from everyone, not only from the decision-making team, but from participants as well. We need to encourage them to share their thoughts, what's in their mind, because, a lot of people during these projects, they stay silent, they don't talk, they don't ask questions, and this is what we need to deal with. We need to make them talk. We need to ask them to share their thoughts, because their thoughts might be very, very valuable. And again, anonymous firms, I will not stop repeating it, but I do believe this is something that might help in this process. And of course, again, we need to ask a lot of questions. Why do you believe this is true? What about this fact? Why do you think this fact matters less than that one? How did you come up to this conclusion? We need to challenge initial views of the expert team, of participants if they experience this bias as well. Now, the next bias I'd like to consider is blind spot bias. Blind spot bias is when we think we are less biased than everyone else, or that we're better at spotting biases in others than ourselves. And this is just something to remember. I don't want to stop on this bias, I don't spend a lot of time on it. We're all the same humans, and I'm telling you about all these different biases, and I understand that I also tend to get caught by them in certain occasions. Moreover, these biases, they're coming from our unconscious, so it's quite difficult for us to track them. And the issue with this is that with this bias particularly, we believe that we're less biased when it's just not true. We tend to overestimate our own abilities compared to others. That's what makes us ignore advice coming from others more often, and we miss out opportunities to learn from others, But one of the goals of the collaborative projects is actually share knowledge, is to invite external experts, external teams to bring their knowledge, to bring their technologies. And if we don't want to learn from them, then it's kind of, what's the point in organizing such a process in the first place, right? And yeah, this bias is just a reminder that we're no better than others, and we tend to follow all the same patterns. And I believe that being aware that these bias exist and we are just like everyone else, can help us a bit here. So the facilitator of the process should be the one questioning judgments made by others, especially when there is no real basis, there is no real reasons for opinions expressed. Now, the next bias I want to talk about is information bias, and it's the cognitive bias when people look for information that is irrelevant or just unnecessary for making a decision. Such a bias can result in overestimating the importance of certain information and underestimating the significance of other crucial factors. It can also lead to misinterpretation and a failure to consider the bigger picture. And in our collaborative project example, the decision-making team might pay attention to factors that are not that important. They might look for features or solutions that they don't need to focus on. And this is a lot of work for the facilitator here. That's why we need to have a skilled person again who will be able to point this out and make experts focus on important information. And that's why, again, I want to repeat this. I already mentioned it, but at the beginning of the project, we need to define the challenge, very concrete challenge. That's what we should have for our project. And we need to define all the criteria for solutions. What is really important for us to have at the end of the process? We need to establish these clear requirements and we need to stick to them during the process. And of course, it's about the facilitator asking a lot of questions and challenging the expert teams with questions like, is it really important in our case? What might it influence? How does this information influence what we're looking for? How does this information influence the process and stuff like that? We need to focus on what is truly important. Another bias I want to talk about today is authority bias, which is pretty similar to the bandwagon effect that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And authority bias is when people tend to follow advice or instructions of those in positions of authority, whether it's a boss, a teacher, a doctor, or government official, without much question. It's also about trusting ideas that come with a symbol of authority, like a statement from a major health organizations. Or when it comes to collaborative projects, we might focus on opinions of the company's internal experts or one single expert we believe has the knowledge, the experience. And the idea here is that because someone has formal authority, we assume they are more knowledgeable or they can make better decisions, so we give their opinions more weight, which is not always good because you know what? First of all, they are not always more knowledgeable, they just have more authority. And secondly, everyone can make mistakes. So there is no human being that lives this life without mistakes, and there is no human being that knows everything in the world. It's impossible. Moreover, the idea of the collaborative projects is to bring new knowledge, new technologies, new data, new solutions that company experts might not be aware of. So of course, this bias might badly influence decision making when we want to know which solutions, which ideas we want to proceed with, which ideas will benefit our company. This might also discourage participants from our teams because they might hear that companies' experts don't believe in their solutions, so they should just quit with the project, even if their idea actually shows quite promising results. So this bias might have pretty bad consequences in our collaborative projects. How do we avoid it? Well, pretty much the same way as we do it with the bandwagon effect, and I will just briefly repeat some points that I made before. And first of all, I believe that we might want to remove authority figures from some discussions, or at least leave their opinion for the very end of this discussion, or again leave it for the anonymous survey. We don't want to completely get rid of the opinion of some people with authority because they might be really knowledgeable and they might provide insights that might be very useful for us. But here, when we have the anonymous survey, we can still get this information, but we might not be aware of where it's coming from. And that's what we want. To some extent, of course, also maybe some personal conversations that the facilitator could organize, one-on-ones with internal team experts could also help, because there will be no authority figure around, basically, and everyone will be able to express their opinions more openly. We just need to talk to people more, you know. Of course, during each collaborative project, we have some official meetings where we invite everyone, but as the facilitator of the process, we should talk more to everyone. You know, that's what is really important, I believe. And I would probably also go for inviting third-party experts, again, some university professors or experts from other companies that could express their independent opinions, and they might represent the position to the company's experts. In one of my recent interviews, I heard the opinion that it's really important to have their position to just have, even if it's like minority, but it's important to have the opposite views, just to have options. And I really love this opinion, and I completely agree with that. So we really might want to get someone else to our reviews, and then we will have, for example, like two strong authorities that have different views, and this might change the dynamic of the process, and that might lead to a better decision making, hopefully. And also, this is, by the way, something that was mentioned by Rob Kirschbaum in his interview about open innovation. He said it's important to invite experts from outside for evaluation of solutions. Now, I believe that when it comes to these cognitive biases I mentioned here, a lot depends also on the company's culture in general, on how the innovation processes are built, how forgiving the management is, how well they can tolerate failures, and how open-minded they are. So like all those things, they really influence the biases that we might experience and the team might experience during such collaborative projects. But, you know, still it's important, it's extremely important to recognize them and actively work to mitigate these biases. This is what will enhance collaboration, leading to more informed, to more effective decision-making process, and of course, better outcomes that everyone wants. Here, I believe having a facilitator, having a skilled facilitator of the process, having an intermediate for a collaborative project is already one step forward towards mitigating these biases. Anyway, I hope that this video was helpful and you found something valuable to you to improve the collaborative projects for your company. Maybe you have some thoughts, maybe you have some comments, some ideas in your mind on how to mitigate biases, or what else is important to take into account when working with many talented people, with many bright minds at the same time. Please feel free to share these thoughts in the comment section below. Please also ask questions. I'll be happy to answer them, or just, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn, and yeah, I'll be happy to help. And I hope that I will see you in the next video. And meanwhile, have a great day and bye!